Here's a fun one. Um, the next Avengers movie comes out next month, and I decided to go ahead and just give you a good background of all the how many movies? 21 movies that have come out so far. So instead of you watching them, you can just watch this, and I will have explained it very thoroughly and very properly, all in under 10 minutes. Um, uh, this is not my first try. So instead of what I'm going to do, I'm going to do them in the phases that the movies came out in. Um, Marvel came up with this big giant plan of how these movies are going to be played out, and they did them in phases. So this first video, I'm going to give you the first phase only because, good lord, I couldn't do all of them under 10 minutes justice. I'm barely going to do justice to these, and my time's already started. So here we go. Um, Iron Man 1 came out in 2008, almost 10, 11 years ago. It starred Robert Downey Jr., who is playing Tony Stark, who gets stuck between in a war in Afghanistan, where he gets captured by the Ten Rings, a shady terrorist type group that is forcing him to make weapons. But instead of making weapons, he decides to go ahead and make himself a suit of armor to escape there. He does so, gets out of there, makes it back home to the United States with his assistant Pepper Potts, his best friend Rhodey Rhodes, Rode Rodinson, Rode Rodinson, um, and Obadiah Stane, his the guy that works with him at Stark Industries, played by Jeff Bridges, who will now be known as just Jeff Bridges. So Jeff Bridges is secretly planning to take over his company, and he realizes Tony has this special thing about him, this giant glowy chest thing that's inside his heart that's keeping shrapnels away from his his heart. But it's also powering. It has the power to energize a whole bunch of stuff. So he wants that for himself. Makes himself a giant suit of armor. Fights with Tony. Tony kills him in a big giant ball of arc reactor that he keeps somewhere in some sort of weird factory. Shield gets involved. At the end of the movie, Nick Fury comes out and tells him that he wants to talk to him about the Avengers Initiative, setting up all this giant 10, 11 years of the Marvel Universe. So then, fun fact, Captain America's shield is somewhere there in one of Tony's workshops while he's getting suited up. Um, that comes into play later on. The next movie is The Incredible Hulk, not to be confused with the Hulk, which came out in 2003, directed by Ang Lee. That one doesn't count from the whole overall Marvel Universe thing, so don't even worry about that one. This one, played by Edward Norton, who will later be played by Mark Ruffalo, don't worry, I'll explain that later, is about a man named Bruce Banner who gets dosed with gamma rays, trying to come up with the perfect soldier serum, trying to recreate something that came out that the government tried making back in the 1920s. That'll come into play later. He's on the run from the military and the government and all that. Blah blah blah. He's somewhere in Puerto Rico or something like that. He gets chased around. Meanwhile, his girlfriend's dad, General Ross, secretly tries to get his hands on super secret serums and gets one of his soldiers to get injected by it, gets superpowers by it, and he's pretty strong, but then he eventually becomes this giant abomination. They capture the Hulk. They realize that the abomination is too much of an abomination, so they send out the Hulk to fight the abomination. They fight in Harlem for some reason. Hulk defeats the abomination and runs away. At the end of that one, Tony Stark comes out and tells General Ross that he wants to Hulk or the other guy, part of the Avengers Initiative. and then moving on to Iron Man 2, which takes place 6 months after Iron Man 1, where Tony Stark has established himself as a superhero, and he becomes the super cool, popular guy because he's zappity zoop, zap, zap, zap. And he has this giant Stark Expo, which is kind of like a Comic Con, kind of like a convention for all future tech that comes out later on in the future, and he shows off his own unique stuff. Um, Meanwhile, there's this guy named Whiplash who is very jealous of Tony because Whiplash and Tony's dad work together. Tony's dad betrayed Whiplash's dad, and he wants revenge for it. So he comes out with him with these giant lassos made of electricity, fights him on a go-kart race, and then eventually fights with him at the expo, where amongst all the chaos and all the people running around, there's a little tiny kid who Tony saves. Turns out that kid is Peter Parker. And it comes into play later, sort of. Oh god, 6 minutes. Okay, so then he saves the day. Nick Fury comes in, tells him, "Hey, guess what? You're not actually part of the Avengers anymore because you're kind of a hothead." He goes, "Oh damn, never mind." So then go to the Thor. Thor is played by Chris Hemsworth. It's about the Asgard, the King of Thunder, the God of Thunder. Sorry. Thor, who lives on Asgard with his dad Odin and his brother Loki and his mother, and he lives the merry fairy tale life. But he becomes too spoiled and a brat, and his dad sends him back to Earth to become more in tune with his humanity. He realizes the errors of his ways. His brother betrays him. His brother falls down after they get in this big giant fight. He is saved later on by somebody else in the future. I'll explain it later. Thor learns the errors of his ways. His dad lets him back to Asgard, and he also has Natalie Portman as his girlfriend. Captain America is the next film, which is set in the 1920s, I believe. I believe it's World War II, if I'm not mistaken. I hope I'm getting that right. I'm doing this really quick, so I can't really research right now. But it's he's fighting Nazis, and then he's a little skinny boy, and he enlists to try to join the army. They don't let him. He enlists into the super secret soldier serum experiments that Bruce Banner and the government tried to recreate back in their movie. Because this one was so successful, it created Captain America. He was kind of the poster boy for the army for a while. And then he showed his vigor by saving his friend Bucky, but Bucky dies later on, and he eventually has to fight the Red Skull. Red Skull has the Tesseract. It's this big giant glowy ball that apparently has super powers of some sort. And then he loses the fight to Captain America. He flies off into space somewhere. Captain America falls into ice, gets frozen for over 60 years or so, gets thawed out in 2012 or 2011, depending how you look at it, by Nick Fury, who enlists him into the Avengers Initiative. And then cut to a weird little mini trailer at the end of that one. Instead of an end credit sequence, it was just a trailer to the Avengers, which leads into the Avengers, where Nick Fury decides to bring all these guys in, along with Black Widow and Hawkeye, who are also agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., to stop Thor's brother Loki, who tries to take over the world because he has the power of this cosmic stone that someone gave him from outer space, the guy who saved him. But then he invades New York. The Avengers are not having it. They all group together. They become this big power force, making millions of dollars for Disney, and defeating Loki, sending him back to Asgard, and sending a message to anyone on in space that, hey, we're protecting this Earth. End of that movie brings the purple-faced Thanos, who will be the big bad guy of this entire story that plays out in all these 22 movies. So I did that just under 10 minutes. Um, I think I did good. That's just phase one. Actually, no. You know what? I think I might have screwed that one up too. But hey, I think I did pretty well. It was in between that time, 9-10 minutes. Look, I did as fast as I could. I think I did a good job. Um, I hope you enjoyed that. Um, I'm very tired. Um, I've been trying to set up this stupid video and this whole thing for like the past 2-3 hours and racking my brain over some idea to put on video because I want to keep doing this, but I also want this to be more entertaining. So I hope this was entertaining, and if you really enjoyed it and you want me to continue on with the next few movies and do 10 minutes each, give you a good 30 minutes, I can do that for you. If not, then fine. Be that way. I'm gonna enjoy watching the last Avengers movie.